Welcome to Spirit Journey Collective. I'm your host, Sarah Tai. Get ready for compelling conversations with guests of all walks of life who believe they have found their purpose. Together, we will uncover unique backstories, hearing the raw experiences that led them to the work they are doing today. Let's expand our minds together with the captivating stories and inspiration that awaits. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of Spirit Journey Collective. I have a really great guest today. Her name is Mckay Blue, and she is a yoga and meditation teacher. And I'm really excited to have her on. I actually was a guest on her podcast, which I'm really excited is going to drop soon. So she's also a fellow podcaster. And we had a great conversation, and I thought, oh my gosh, I have to have her on as a guest. So thank you so much for being here today, Mckay.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here and talk to you again.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember we talked a little bit about your story before, and I was like, oh my gosh, I love your backstory from what you shared with me and the work you're doing. So I'm just so excited to have you here. Why don't you share a little bit with our listeners what it means to be a yoga and meditation teacher and what it is that you offer?
Yeah, so I do yoga and meditation, and I'm also traveling a lot. So I offer a lot of online courses for consistency and virtual one-on-ones for people who need anything from improved mobility all the way to just more intense meditation, accountability, and just deepening that connection with the self. And so I kind of tailor all of my consultations based on the person and their needs. And then I'm also excited to announce the launch of my meditative mindset challenge, which will be a 90-day challenge starting in the new year. A lot of people will set a lot of intentions and goals for the new year as a part of their New Year's resolutions, and they'll be very physical or financial goal, a career goal, something along those lines. But you don't hear as much about the mindset behind everything. And the mindset, for me at least, is the foundation of consistency. So this challenge has different levels to it. The first one is just practicing mindfulness for 1 minute a day. And I'm going to be releasing a lot of videos to help guide people through these challenges. And it starts out with that all the way to level 3, which is you get an accountability one-on-one with me if that's something that you want to add on. Or you can just do 2 sessions of mindfulness for 10 to 15 minutes a day, and you're journaling every single day. And during this whole challenge, there are monthly worksheets and those sorts of things. So that way you have a full spectrum of not only accountability and kind of doing this with a community, but you also have the opportunity to see how you're progressing in whatever intention you've set at the beginning of the challenge. So, yeah, those are my main offerings at the moment. And I'm really excited for anybody who wants to join the Meditative Mindfulness Challenge.
That sounds awesome. So my question, I guess, for you with everything you shared, when you say that you work with people and help them, get into meditation and get to that space, do you ever work with anyone who's like, I have no idea how to meditate, or I have such a hard time getting into that space? Do you talk to a lot of people who like feel stuck in that, like they want to meditate, but they feel like they can't?
Yes. And, well, the initial thought is just distraction. And I think that that's something that everybody goes through, and it's distraction or feeling discomfort. And that can come from so many different places. But what people don't really realize when they're getting into meditation is that one of the big purposes behind meditation is that it can help you get comfortable with those uncomfortable things. So it's really the magic is what you think is stopping you from being able to do the thing.
So basically, like most of the time, it's like, okay, don't think or don't have thoughts or, stay focused. And then, of course, our thoughts continue and everything else. You're saying that it's about learning how to sit with those thoughts.
and then still be in that space regardless, like kind of become that observer of like everything you're feeling?
Yeah, so that's largely what it is. It's also the type of meditation you're doing. So you don't have to just do a meditation without thoughts. There's also mantra meditation, which is something I recommend for people if they are having a really difficult time with focusing or sitting still, especially at first, is just kind of focusing on one mantra the entire meditation. And just to start off with like 1 to 2 minutes, because it's something that you want to build up over time. So there's no reason to kind of jump in with, oh, I need to do 30 minutes to an hour and just try to sit here. You can honestly just start with a small amount and just let it be the seed that grows over time.
I love that. That makes a lot of sense. I was asking because that's one of my biggest struggles with meditation. I love meditation. I think I do probably best with like the visually kind, the ones that like take you on a journey. Those ones I'm much better with. But when it comes to like just being with myself and being quiet and just being, that's when I struggle because that's when my mind likes to just go crazy. And so I like that suggestion of using a mantra because that sounds like a great way to ground and kind of keep you focused and then kind of keep the outside distractions at bay without it being like you have to do a whole lot. You're just focusing on the mantra. So that's really amazing and great advice. And I'm going to be taking notes on this during our conversation because I love the idea of meditating. And I've had some really great meditations. It's just, I think part of it too is I have ADHD. So I know like sitting still and calming down is really difficult for me. I think there's a little bit of anxiety in there too. But yeah, so yeah, it's really great advice. I would love to ask you from here, how did you find this work in yoga? Is it something that you like knew you wanted to do, or is it something that you kind of fell into at a later time? Like how did you step into this work?
Yeah, so I feel like it's always been hinted to me throughout my life. So I started off really my first moment of being really interested in this sort of practice was back when I was in like sixth, seventh, eighth grade, middle school timeframe. And I went to a really small Methodist school. And we had a religious class every Monday. And the person who taught it was the priest. And he was actually very nice and very open to all like religions and belief systems. So we didn't just learn about Christianity, we got to learn about like Hinduism, Islam, Buddhism. And when I heard about Buddhism, like out of all of the religions that we'd studied, that one for some reason I just identified more with. And I liked a lot of the teachings that we started learning about. And I didn't really do that much with it then because I think I got very distracted and it just kind of sparked an interest in me. And then throughout like my high school years and college, I would take yoga classes here and there. I would read about philosophy or spirituality, especially the more Eastern ones. And I just feel like there was always a pull towards it, but I was so focused because what I now know is my root chakra was out of whack. So I didn't have like financial stability for a long time. I didn't have any of those things in check. So I was doing what you think you're supposed to be doing in terms of like, oh, I need to move to a big city and get a corporate job. And this is what I need to do. I need to be able to support and sustain myself and start kind of on the corporate ladder and the consumerism ladder. And so I moved to New York and got my first corporate job there. And it was one day that I was walking back home and they had a big sign out that said that they had a yoga teacher training available. And that was the first time I ever realized, like, oh, yeah, you can train and actually become a yoga teacher. It's not just like taking classes. I would actually get to learn a lot more about the spirituality behind it. So then lockdown happened. So during COVID, I actually took the initiative. I moved down to Florida and became a certified yoga teacher. And that was when I kind of saw the parallels between Buddhism and yoga, as well as some of like the Hindu practices and yoga. And I just it just kind of all made sense. It was a big aha moment for me when I just started teaching, and I've taught in various fitness studios, in apartment complexes. And my favorite classes, though, have been so far on the beach or in the park, because those are the ones that I get to really incorporate a lot more meditation as well as yoga into. And then the one-on-one sessions are also absolutely fantastic. And so now at a part of my journey where I was still working in corporate America for most of that time. And for the past year and a half, I've kind of been planning this jump. And so now I'm a full-time yoga teacher and meditation practitioner. So yeah, that's my story.
I love that. That's an amazing story. And I love how it ties into your past, right? It's so funny when we're children, I think we almost have a sense of like what we're interested in, but then society and conditioning kind of like shoos that away and we're kind of, guided into, oh no, we do this, we don't do that. You know what I mean? But how unique was it that you were at a Methodist school for a time and they were introducing you to other religions and other belief systems? That's practically unheard of. So it's almost like it was supposed to be there to catch your attention and kind of keep
Yeah.
you curious, right? Because you would never have really, I mean, you may have found it later on, but this kind of opened you up in a curious way when you were younger and more open. So that is really cool. And as far as like where you're coming from, how you did the thing, you got a corporate job, you fell in line with what society says you should do. And I love that story because in so many ways, it's like almost everyone else, it's like other light worker stories are very similar to that one. Not everyone. I mean, I've talked to other light workers that have different backgrounds, but many of them did the corporate thing, checked off all the boxes, and still kind of felt like there was something missing and felt like this isn't this is what I'm supposed to be doing, but why do I feel like there's not like something's not quite right? And then for you to, while you're still in the corporate world, realize that you could actually explore yoga and actually like look at it as a real potential career versus before you didn't think that was possible. I mean, and then lockdown happened, which again there's this huge correlation with light workers coming into their own power and their own gifts stemming from COVID. It's so fascinating. I've talked to
Yeah.
so many people and myself included. I didn't start reading professionally until 2021 because 2020 was my spiritual awakening. And then 2021 was when I got called into being a reader. But, I've talked to so many other people who woke up, so to speak, around the COVID times. It's just crazy when you see all the similarities to other light workers. And then also, seeing how your own journey, it started back when you were introduced to Buddhism. And then look where it's taking you. Now you're teaching this spiritual side full time, and that's so beautiful. Do you feel like you found your gifts and your purpose doing the work that you're doing now?
I definitely do. I feel like another one of the contrasts between when I was working in the corporate world to what I'm doing now is I just felt like I wanted to be distracted most of the time in the corporate world. Like there would be times where I'd have something exciting to do, or I loved like talking to people, meeting people, being engaged with people, and having conversations. But I found that a lot of the more grunt work I was doing, it was really hard for me to not be like trying to turn myself into a robot. Basically, just being like, okay, how can I do this as quickly as possible? And can I listen to a podcast while I'm doing it? Can I watch a show while I'm doing it? Can I think about something that I need to think about while I'm doing this? Can I take a course while I'm doing this? And I just felt, I never really felt that present. And that just took a toll on me, especially because I was working remotely. So there was like isolation and then constant distraction. And then I also just recently got semi-diagnosed with ADD. I took a test and my psychiatrist is against just diagnosing people, but they're just like, yeah, you have a lot of distraction tendencies, some frustration we can see in there. And so I was just like, okay, this is all making sense. And working in this line of work is also making that those tendencies worse because I don't want to be focused. And now with this line of work, I just feel really grateful all of the time. I feel very focused, very present, and yoga is all about connection. And so I'm able to connect with people in a really deep way. And it feels great when people are able either just to simply feel really nice and refreshed after a yoga class, or maybe they're a bit uncomfortable, but uncomfortable in a way that they've needed to be. And so it's just helping people genuinely connect to where they're at and hold space for that. That is just a feeling for me that feels almost illegal to have.
I love that description. That it feels a little bit like too good to be true that you can actually enjoy what you're doing as much as you are. But I
Yeah.
love that so much because it literally speaks to when you tap into your gifts, right? It's like coming home. It's the easiest, most fulfilling thing that you could plug into. And you don't know that feeling until you find it. Then you find it and you're like, this can't be real because we've been conditioned and brainwashed by society that work is supposed to be hard.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be grueling. You're supposed to, do, like push yourself until, you retire and then you get to relax. Like there's no belief system that you can have it all now, right? It just doesn't exist. Even though it exists, it's just the belief out there that we're taught is completely backwards. And so yeah, it sounds like you were really in your masculine energy before. And I think that that's what society runs off of, right? It's just that go, go, go action culture. There's no time to slow down or think. And I totally get it because I'm trying to get out of it right now. I'm stuck personally more in that hustle culture, and I'm gonna blame it a little bit on being a single parent, but I know it's also a choice in a way. So I'm like working on pulling away from that, but that's what we're geared like from children. That's what we're taught. We're supposed to be in the corporate world. We're supposed to be working ourselves till we're exhausted. Like that's just what we're taught is normal. And so I love it how in your story you started realizing how it was actually burning you out. When you got your ADD diagnosis, you realized, oh, well, this world I'm in is not helping this at all, And so it sounds like you were able to find what gave you peace, and now you're helping others find it too. And you're able to
Yeah.
probably even help others who are coming from where you did. So now you kind of have an eye for where they're coming from because you were there. And so I love that too, because it comes back to this saying that I love that says we teach what we most need to learn. And, it sounds like you know what it's like because you were there and now you're trying to help other people find their center just like you did. And so that's so beautiful. Again, I loved how you described how it made you feel doing the work that you do, because that is exactly how it feels when you're plugged into your gifts and your magic and your purpose. So that's so cool. What is a struggle that you see with a lot of clients that you work with, that there's usually like one struggle that you probably see over and over again? What is that struggle, and then what is advice you'd give for that struggle in case anyone listening can relate to that?
If it's okay, I'll do two struggles just because a lot of people will come to yoga just for the physical aspect, or they're kind of more interested in going deeper. So I see kind of two different main struggles depending on what they're coming to yoga for and what they know about yoga. And I would say one of the number one ones for the physical aspect is mobility or fear of limited mobility. For instance, one of my clients right now is in their 50s or 60s has never stretched in their life. And you can just see the impact it's having on the quality of their life and just basic moving around. And it's amazing to see that with just even one mobility yoga session, they're able to go from very tight to just a little bit more relaxed and open throughout their body. And that's something that I would say is like at any age, you can just start doing a little bit of flexibility. There's for flexibility versus strength training, like if you're really focused on like getting bigger, gaining more muscle, all that kind of stuff, the maintenance on that, once you reach what you want to reach, is working out at least twice a week, you know, so that there's a big time commitment for that. But with flexibility, you can get to where you want to get to mobility wise and then just train that twice a month. But now that changes with age and different issues you might have. But that is a significant difference. And once people learn that, it's usually a lot easier to be like, okay, I can kind of commit to stretching a bit more, movement a bit more, incorporating maybe even just 5 minutes into whatever activities I'm doing just to open up my body and not even necessarily get to a level where you're doing splits or anything fancy like that, but maybe where you can touch your toes or maybe where you can easily release parts of your body that feel a lot of tension. Like a lot of people have that in their lower back from sitting and their posture. So yeah, on one end, it would be around issues or concerns with mobility. And I would just say, start moving. It's very easy to get into. There's so much free content on YouTube. You can also just start just moving around, seeing what feels good, and connect that with your breathing as well. You'll just feel better overall, and you'll get pretty quick results from doing it consistently that are easy to maintain throughout your life. On the other hand, there's also the people who come to me, and this is a little bit more of what we were talking about earlier with meditation and just being able to kind of sit with yourself, or you want to just connect more with your spirituality, with your body, with the people around you, and feeling like you can handle what's happening. And you can also get, if that's what you're looking for, you can get a sense of like observing versus attaching. And I think that just practicing a little bit of meditation, a little bit of breath work, a little bit of yoga, and incorporating that more can give you the tools that you need to help in situations where you're in a real life, maybe argument with someone, or you're under a lot of stress because there's been a lot happening, or maybe you're having an existential crisis or panic attack or something like that, but you're able to kind of sit through those emotions better and self-soothe more.
Those are both really, really great advice. It's funny that one of the things that you mentioned is stretching, and well, you mentioned how some people might come to yoga and be like, I don't know if I could do that. And then that's like the mindset of, oh, I don't know if that's for me because it just looks complicated, or I don't know if I can do those things with my body, right? And that's the point of yoga, right? It's actually to reconnect with your body. No, but when you mentioned the stretching part, that kind of made me laugh a little bit, because that's me. I don't really stretch very often. Doing yoga is actually one of those things I want to get myself into. But my partner's always like harping on me. He's like, you need to stretch. He doesn't do yoga or anything like that either, but he stretches all the time. He stretches daily. And he's like, always giving me such a hard time. He's like, you need to stretch like daily, he's like, otherwise you're gonna get cramps, you're gonna get sores, you're gonna get knots, you're gonna get all these different things. So for the first time in my life, I'm actually starting to stretch, because I realize that now it's important. I'm like, oh yeah, I probably should have been doing that since like grade school. But, you know, I think a lot of people just feel like they don't have the time, right? Or they don't know it's that big of a deal. And then when they go to actually do something with their body, they're like, oh, maybe I should have been doing this already. So I did have a
It's time to take a short break from our wonderful speaker. Are you in the need of guidance around love, career, family, life, or purpose? Embark on a spiritual journey inward with an intuitive tarot reading. Depending on what you're needing and looking for, I offer private one-on-one sessions as well as personalized email readings. It doesn't matter what the question is. A reading with me provides connection with your higher self, offering curated personal messages, or what I like to refer to as spiritual roadmaps, guiding you to the future outcome you desire. Readings are insightful and affordable. If you'd like more information or to schedule a reading with me, please see the link below.
I did have a question when it comes to yoga and for meditation. When you work with people, is it only in person or is it also virtual for both of them?
Yeah, it's both. It really just depends. Right now, I am in Buenos Aires in Argentina. So I have several people who from the US and from Canada who I work with virtually. And then I also have a few clients and a weekly yoga in the park session in English here in Buenos Aires. So it's really about what's convenient for the both of us and scheduling.
That's really good to know, because when I was hearing, you talk about yoga, and I thought, oh my gosh, is this in person or virtual? So it's really cool that you're able to offer that. You know, Technology is amazing. We could do so
Yeah.
many things virtually now that we couldn't do 10 years ago. You know what I mean? So that's really cool. And that's really great advice on, you know, just start, right? Just start, and
Yeah.
know that it doesn't have to be a huge commitment so long as you're doing a little bit of stretches a day and leaning into it a little bit. So I love that advice. And even for the other side, for the meditation. From here, I'd love to switch to what I like to call synchronicity story time. It's one of my favorite segments because it's just so magical. And I do feel like some of the things you've shared is kind of synchronistic already. But do you have any other standalone stories that were synchronistic, where things just kind of lined up perfect, or maybe even a positive paranormal story? Do you have anything like that you could share?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have a few things. So ever since I was little, I grew up in a very small town. Well, not small town, small city, I would say, Annapolis, Maryland, and it's very historic. So growing up in Annapolis, my house was literally next to the house that was one of the signers of the Declaration of Independence. There are so many like ghost tours, so many stories, and there's so much history in this one tiny city. And my house, or the house that I grew up in, was built back in the 1800s and was brick. And then when you went up into the attic, it was really cool because back then they would just go down to the harbor and buy old wood and stuff like that from ships. So when you go into the attic, it looks like an inverted ship's hull. And there were a lot of just spooky things that would happen around that house and in the house. And when I was really little, about 3 or 4 years old, my mom would come into my room at like 3 in the morning, and she would just see me sat up on my bed talking to someone in front of me. And she would ask me, like, KK, what are you doing? Who are you talking to? And I would just be like, oh, it's Sarah. Like, do you not, it's she's right there. So my mom did some research and she told me that there was actually a girl who lived in the house at one point. So she actually told me, my mom did some research and she actually told me that there was a little girl named Sarah who did live in the house at one point. And so I don't know if it was just her energy that stayed in the house or what had happened. but yeah, that was kind of strange. And then I always had vivid dreams that would turn into deja vu. And so my dreams, when I have these intense dreams, usually point towards premonition or intuition. So I've had a lot of instances where I'll dream something and have a very strong feeling around it, and then something will happen in the future. And the last thing that this happened to, I don't know if he's around right now, but he's not, but my cat Poe. So a month before I got him, I had a dream about a little black cat, and I was just kind of craving. I already had two cats and I was just craving like finding a little kitten. And then I was just like, no, I already have enough cats. This is too much. I'll forget about this. And then Halloween morning, I get a call from my friends, and he just says, "Hey, Mckay, do you want a kitten?" And my first instinct is yes. So then he sends me a photo, and he found this little kitten in his parents' chicken coop. And they were hiding in there just because it was really a cold day outside, and there's coyotes and stuff like that are out in the woods and everything. And so they found this little kitten, and then just I gave him to me, and I was just like, this is literally the kitten I had a dream about.
Those are such cool stories. I have to ask you, the one about Sarah, do you remember that? I mean, I know that you're a lot of this sounds like your mom sharing with you, but do you remember talking to her? Like, do you have memories of of that at all?
I actually have a memory. I have a memory of me sat up and just looking. There was a fireplace in front of me, and I just remember the room being really dark and there being something like purple in front of me that felt like home. That felt like a friend. I remember communicating, but I don't really remember any specific details. I just remember those sorts of feelings and a couple of the visuals.
Okay. Wow, that's so cool. I mean, and even like cooler that your mom was able to find some kind of an anchor, like, oh well, there's some history here. And I used to do paranormal investigating like 10 years ago, just kind of as a hobby. But like Southern California, we have some old buildings, but they're not nearly as old as the East Coast. So I can only imagine the experiences that, were happening over there with all the history and all you know, the energies that are probably still lingering and things like that. So that's an amazing story. And then the story with your cat, that's so cool. So it looked just like the cat in your dream.
Mhm. Yeah, I've always loved like Edgar Allan Poe. And so my favorite poem by him is Annabel Lee. And so I found him on Halloween. His name is Poe after Edgar Allan Poe. And he actually has a poem called The Black Cat. And one of the cats in it is all black with a little tuft of white right there. And that's exactly how he is. He's like jet black with a little tuft of white.
That's awesome. I have a synchronicity with one of my cats too. Is he jumped in my car one day? Like, what cat does that? And he did it a couple times because I was trying to get my daughter in her car seat, and this cat just jumped in, and I was like, "Hello!" And I couldn't take him because I was going to work and my daughter was going to daycare. So I put him out, and then he jumped back in. And I put him out, and he jumped back in, and I finally got him out. And then I saw him. My daughter and I saw him around for like a month. We figured he was probably a stray. And then about a month later, on the coldest night of the year, like I know the East Coast, you guys actually get winter, but for us, like it drops down to like 30s for like the coldest, right? So for us, that was super cold. And it was like in the 30s, and he met us at my carport. He followed us home, walked right in, and that was that. Like, I mean, of course, I made sure he didn't belong to anyone else first, but yeah, like he jumped in my car, and then it's like he chose us. It was wild. Yeah, it's so cool when you have like, it's almost like in your story, it's like your cat chose you too. It's like your cat came to you, probably even before it was born, because if it was a kitten, it might have even come to you
Yeah.
before it was born. It was like, hey, remember me because I'm coming for you.
Yeah. Yeah, it was so weird because it's definitely those things where you have like a strong feeling or imprint and you're just like, oh no, I'll forget about it, and, and then it comes back.
Yeah, it's funny with my cat too, because my daughter had been asking, "Can we get a cat? Can we get a dog?" And I'm a single parent, so I'm like, I don't know, like that's a lot, But then he like chose us, and then not only that, but he had the perfect temperament for her because she's has a lot of energy. And she was at the time she was 5, so she was learning, the best, like she was learning like, oh, cats aren't stuffed animals, like I need to treat them nicely. So she knew she was just starting to have to learn that with him. He was so good with her, and then every now and again he'd put her in her place. So he was spunky enough to deal with her, but then most of the time
Yeah.
he was just like the perfect temperament. And it was literally like he chose us. I can't even explain it better than that. And it's just so cool when pets do that, because it's like it just there's obviously something more going on than what meets the eye. The final question I would love to ask you: do you feel like everyone here on this earth has a purpose and has gifts that they can tap into?
I think that that's definitely a really interesting question. That I think that people actually might have different things that they can connect with and for it to feel like a purpose. So I think that it's dependent. It's like sometimes it comes from within. And then sometimes I think experiences or maturity, changes in wants can definitely like impact that direction. For instance, for me, I think that working with people in a healing and light working sort of way like that feels like a purpose for me, but the way it manifests could be different. Like maybe if I was younger and going to back to college and that sort of stuff, maybe it would have manifested as becoming a therapist, or I might have gone down different routes if I was more tapped into myself at different stages in my life. So I feel like you can find a purpose, or it can a purpose can genuinely come up through you the more connected you are to yourself and the more open you are to the different things around you and your circumstances. And it's really just about connecting with it and feeling that feeling. And I feel like everybody has the ability to do that, whether they're very skeptical about everything or just already drinking the Kool-Aid, already super into this sort of mindset and way of thinking.
But that's a really interesting perspective, because it does speak, and I 100% believe in this, because I don't think it's just like a one and done purpose. I think it evolves. Like even now, if you feel like you're plugged into it, it will likely evolve into something else as you grow and evolve. So depending on your trajectory, like you said, you could plug into it in different forms, because the purpose itself isn't the thing, it's the fulfillment that comes underneath it. And that can show up in so many different ways. Like as a therapist, for instance, you're still helping people heal. It's just another aspect of what you're doing now. So I really, really loved that perspective, because it doesn't make like, anyone who's listening who doesn't feel like they've plugged into it yet, it can come in so many different forms. It doesn't have to be cookie cutter. It doesn't have to be just because, a lot of the listeners might hear these stories about corporate burnouts. It doesn't mean that you have to be a corporate burnout to find your purpose, right? There's so many
Yeah.
different, you could already be plugged into it and just have an aspect of it, and if you're able to look at that too, so then you can explore further. So I really, really love that. And I 100% agree that I think that we all have the potential. I think some of us are more open, like you said, drinking the Kool-Aid. But I do think that even those that are more closed-minded, that aren't open to it, I think that they have the potential to plug into it as well. It's just more about, like you said, knowing yourself and knowing what lights you up and following that. So I really love that answer. This has been such a great conversation. I'm so glad that we got to connect again. How can our listeners find you if they want to work with you either as a meditation coach or yoga? How can they find you?
So I'm on Instagram at Lost Yogini, and I also have a website, just lostyogini.com, and I am on different social media platforms as Lost Yogini or the Lost Yogini, and that's probably the best way to initially connect with me. Feel free to DM or reach out, follow along, and yeah.
Okay, awesome. I will be sure to post all those links in the show notes. And then wait, one more quick question, because I know you also have a podcast that's going to be launching soon. Where can they find that if they want to connect to your podcast?
Yeah, absolutely. So that will be on YouTube at Lost Yogini and on Spotify under the same name. Spotify might come a little bit more delayed than YouTube, but everything will be out.
Oh, perfect. I will put that in the show notes as well. That's so exciting. I'm happy. I'm like super excited for you and can't wait for that. So again, this has been such a great conversation. Thank you again for joining me. And yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for joining me on another inspiring episode. Remember, your purpose is a unique and unfolding path. I hope these conversations have ignited a spark within you. Until next time, keep exploring, growing, and embracing the beautiful adventure of connecting with your purpose. Stay tuned for more meaningful conversations. If you enjoyed the episode today, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And thank you for joining me on this journey.